Warning: do not play this video on speaker when in public, or at least use an earpiece if you do. Before we continue with the story, let me give you a little background. If you are familiar with the Kama Sutra in Hinduism, wherein sexual intercourse is considered holy practices or sacred way of life, then please be open to learn its counterpart in Taoism, the dual cultivation. Dual cultivation is an art of pleasure. This art of pleasure is considered to be a way of life for some Taoist practitioners, believed to extend one's lifespan if performed properly. Now, welcome to a different world. Enjoy and be amazed. Chapter 1. Two figures sat on the highest point of the Eternal Retribution Cliff. One old man and the other a handsome young man with otherworldly features. The old man emitted an ancient aura that caused the surrounding space to twist and turn, and the young man casually sat beside him, looking as though the heavy atmosphere did not bother him at all. Young man, what crimes have you committed to get yourself stuck in this gloomy place? You do not look like someone who belongs here. The old man asked the young man, his gaze filled with interest as he looked at the young man, who was surrounded by a noble aura that calmed the space surrounding him. The young man showed a slight smile. I have done many things, one such as devouring the forbidden fruit created by His Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor, he said in a calm voice. The old man lifted his brows in surprise, and his gaze flickered with shock as he looked at the young man. You, unsure of what to say, the old man stuttered non-stop. To be shocked speechless, this was a first even for someone as ancient as him, not to mention his wide eyes that hadn't been this wide for countless years. I'm more surprised that you're still alive after all that than what you've done. The young man only smiled at his words. Suddenly, the old man burst out laughing. I can already imagine the raging face of the Heavenly Emperor when he first heard the news. Ah, young man, I have taken a liking to you. What is your name? The ancient aura surrounding the old man had long disappeared. He looked and acted more like a kind grandpa than anything now. The name's Su Yang, said the young man. Then Su Yang, would you like to leave this place? The old man suddenly grinned, showing his 2 rows of yellow teeth. Su Yang turned to look at the old man's face for the first time. It was filled with wrinkles, almost like a dried-up fruit. However, despite his ghost-like face, his eyes were as clear as water, and they shone brighter than the brightest stars in this eternal night sky. What's the point? Su Yang said a moment later. Even if I can leave this place, it will only trigger the Heavenly Emperor's anger even further. I think I prefer sitting here until my soul rots away than having to constantly deal with the Heavenly Emperor's wrath. What if I say that you can leave and not have to worry about the Heavenly Emperor? The old man kept a grin on his face, but deep in his gaze flickered a profound light. Then what? What should I do after leaving? Continue living the sinful life that I have been living for the past thousands of years, or take revenge on those who wrongly accused me? That is up to you. Su Yang suddenly reached his hands towards the night sky and made a grasping motion, almost as if he wished to grab a hold of the stars shining above. Then, if I one day decide to leave this place, I will. He suddenly stopped talking and smiled. Forget it. I think I'd still rather be lazy in this place until I die. The old man suddenly started laughing again. You're still too young to completely hide your desire from this ancient one, young one. Even if you stay here for all eternity, can you really die from old age, an immortal such as yourself? Ha. Your wish. I shall grant it. He suddenly stood up and waved his sleeves, and the night sky that hadn't changed since the creation of this Eternal Retribution Cliff suddenly turned to day, bewildering every soul that dwelt there. You! Who are you? Su Yang stared at the grinning old man with wide eyes. The old man said, just an old man with nothing better to do. Right, before I send you away, I'd like to thank you for what you did. Thank me? What do you mean by that? Before Su Yang could ask the old man why he was being thanked, a bright white light suddenly engulfed the world, taking away his vision. Immediately after getting blinded by the white light, Su Yang felt a sharp pain near his heart, like he had just been stabbed by a sword. He snapped his eyes wide open to see a handsome young man with a vicious grin on his face, standing in front of him on a wide stage, and in his grasp was a steel sword. "Che, I narrowly missed his heart," mumbled the handsome young man. Su Yang looked down to see a sword penetrating his body, and he instantly became alert. Scram! Within Su Yang's body suddenly exploded an overwhelming aura filled with killing intent, causing the handsome young man before him and the dozens of people surrounding their stage to cough up a mouthful of blood. And because the handsome young man was standing so close to Su Yang, he directly fell unconscious after coughing up blood. The place instantly turned dead silent, and Su Yang pulled out the sword that was still stuck in his chest, ignoring the pain. After taking the sword out of his chest, Su Yang took this moment to quickly search through his memories. In his memories, he found out that he was inside the body of a young cultivator with the same name as his Su Yang, and that he has the exact same looks as his younger self. However, the similarities stopped there and everything else was different. His cultivation base was near non-existent when compared to his old cultivation base, and he is currently a disciple in this profound blossom sect, a sect that heavily focuses on dual cultivation where two people of the opposite gender indulge in sexual practices for cultivation. It is almost as if he had traveled back in time to when he was just a young boy who had recently started cultivating. As for how he got into this situation, the Su Yang before him had gone to court a female disciple named Xing Xing and ended up offending her current partner, Yan Ming, the now unconscious handsome young man before him, which resulted in a death match between them. What in the name of heavens is happening? Su Yang suddenly recalled how the old man in the Eternal Retribution Cliff had said that he will help him leave the place. Did he send me back in time? No, I don't recall ever becoming a disciple of this profound blossom sect. Then, in the midst of Su Yang's thoughts, a loud shout suddenly broke the silence. "Everybody halt your movements." A middle-aged man jumped onto the stage and looked at Su Yang and the unconscious Yan Ming with a frown. "Who authorized the two of you to have a death match today? Scram before I call for the disciplinary squad." "Yes, elder son." The disciples around the stage hurriedly scrambled away, leaving only Su Yang and Yan Ming on the stage. Su Yang decided to leave this place first and ponder later. Before he jumped off the stage, the middle-aged man called Elder Son looked at him and said, "What's your name?" "Su Yang," he replied in a calm tone. Elder Son nodded and no longer looked at him and directly went to pick up the unconscious Yan Ming to take him away. After leaving the stage, Su Yang searched through his memories and began walking towards his living quarters. Chapter 2. Hey look, that's Su Yang, the idiot who decided to court senior apprentice sister Xing despite being aware of her partner. Didn't senior apprentice brother Yan have a death match with him today? What happened? Look at his robes. It's covered in blood. Does this mean that the deathmatch has already been settled and that Su Yang won and Yan Ming is now dead? Impossible. He's only at the 3rd level of the elementary spirit realm, whilst Yan Ming is at the 6th level of the elementary spirit realm. Such a wide gap. Even I wouldn't dare to imagine winning, let alone that good-for-nothing Su Yang. Then why is he still alive? When two enters the stage for a death match, they have to fight until one dies. I have never heard of both fighters surviving after a death match. Let's go ask him. The disciples spoke to each other as they watched Su Yang walk through the sect with a bloodied hole in his white robe with a calm expression, almost as if he was unaware of the grave injury on his chest. "Hey, Su Yang, you bastard! How did you survive the death match against Yan Ming?" A group of disciples blocked his path, halting his steps. The disciples' action quickly aroused the attention of those around them, and they became the center of attention. "I do not have the time to play with kids, Scrum." Su Yang refused to give them another glance and walked around them, dumbfounding everybody there. Since when did this idiot become so daring and arrogant? To think he'd disregard the faces of so many disciples at once? Did he finally go nuts? Su Yang, take one more step and you will pay," the one leading the group suddenly roared, startling everyone. However, despite his threatening words, Su Yang continued to walk, not even turning his head to look, completely ignoring them. "You fucking bastard!" Veins appeared on the forehead of the disciple who shouted, and he chased after Su Yang with his fists tightly clenched. In the midst of taking his second step, Su Yang suddenly snapped his head to look at him with a narrowed gaze filled with killing intent. His horrifying gaze that seemed to be sharp enough to make a hole in a large boulder froze the disciple's movements and caused him to tremble uncontrollably, almost as if he was watching a hungry beast on the verge of pouncing towards him. Plop! The disciple's leg turned to tofu, and he fell to the ground. Even the disciples behind him began shaking their legs, looking like a crowd of clowns dancing in the cold. Humph! A bunch of fools, Su Yang coldly snorted and continued walking. Was that really Su Yang? Or did they mistake him as Su Yang? How could that possibly be Su Yang, although they may look similar? That noble air that surrounded him was completely different than the useless Su Yang that I am familiar with. Right? Su Yang always has this idiotic expression on his face, but that handsome man just now had a sharp and serious face. They are two completely different people. The surrounding disciples began gossiping, some even laughing at the group that decided to stop him. Was that really not Su Yang? The disciple that had fallen to the ground thought to himself, feeling puzzled. Could there really be two people with nearly identical features in this sect? Su Yang's beastly gaze reappeared in the disciple's head, and he quickly dismissed his doubts. That was definitely not Su Yang, but someone who looked like him. The idiotic Su Yang that he knows of would never dare talk back to others, let alone threaten them with that look. Upon reaching his living quarters within the outer court, Su Yang was greeted by another handsome young man in front of the door to his room. Su Yang? You actually managed to survive in a deathmatch against Yan Ming. The young man had initially thought that he was looking at a ghost when he noticed Su Yang walking towards his place from a distance. But now that he was standing in front of him, there was no way that he could be a ghost. From the previous Su Yang's memories, Su Yang recognized this young man. He was his roommate, Tang Hu. I am not feeling so well, so I will be resting in my room. Do not bother me. Su Yang walked into the house without giving him another word. Tang Hu watched him walk past him with his mouth wide open. Good heavens! He mumbled out loud. He really is alive. Su Yang directly went into his room after entering the house and began organizing his thoughts. That old man! What did he do, really? He looked into the mirror hanging on the wall, and memories of his childhood appeared in his head. This is clearly my own body when I was young. But how come I do not recall ever being in this place? Did I actually reincarnate and only regained my memories after getting stabbed in the chest by a sword? To get injured like that, I am really too weak the way I am right now. Su Yang is currently 16 years old, and he has been a disciple of this profound Blossom sect for nearly a year. However, despite being in the sect for nearly an entire year, his cultivation has barely progressed, let alone a breakthrough. Outer court disciples like him who have only recently joined the sect would not receive any assistance from the sect, and has to find a partner by themselves for dual cultivation, where two people of the opposite gender indulge in sexual intercourse for cultivation. Once he becomes an inner court disciple, then he may request the sect to find him a suitable partner. However, Su Yang has not been able to find a partner for himself since joining the sects despite his peak quality features. He was extremely handsome, no doubt handsome enough to seduce the moon god's wife in his past life. Many female disciples, even the senior disciples, fought to be his partner at first. But when they found out that he had severe mental issues with zero talents, they quickly ignored him. No matter how handsome he was, in this sect where their growth depended on their partners, nobody was stupid enough to risk their future just because he was handsome, not to mention the countless other handsome young men and women in this sect. I have been gifted another life by that old man, but this kind of life, Su Yang loudly sighed. To think he, the most handsome man in the world in his past life, where countless peerless goddess and jade-like fairies would stand in line just to be his partner, would be suffering to find a single partner in this sect with thousands of young maidens. If I am still in the same world, then there is a chance that they might still be living in this world. Su Yang's gaze flickered with a profound light as many peerless figures appeared in his mind. I will find them and have them in my embrace once again, and I will not let them go this time. However, before any of that, I must first fix this tarnished reputation of mine. Chapter 3. Inside his room, Su Yang stripped and went into the bathroom that was connected to his room to clean the blood off his body. Still, that kid did a good one on me. How many years has it been since I last saw my own blood, let alone getting a hole opened in my chest? Su Yang was an immortal in his previous life, someone who was near the peak of cultivation. He had it all: beautiful women and power, something that was to be envious of. Now, however, he cannot even hold a candle against a mere mortal at the elementary spirit realm, not to mention the heavy injury. Of course, it was the previous Su Yang who had gotten into that situation, not the current Su Yang. However, Su Yang didn't use it as an excuse since he was in the same body, so he blamed it on himself. After cleaning the blood off his body, he smeared some medicine over the hole in his chest before wrapping some cloth around the injury and calling it a day. By the time Su Yang was done with treating his injury, the news of him beating Yan Ming on the stage in a death match had already spread around the outer court like wildfire. What? That good-for-nothing Su Yang who can't even use his thing down there properly defeated Yan Ming? Are you sure? I saw it with my very two eyes. After getting stabbed in the chest by Yan Ming, Su Yang suddenly roared, and everybody surrounding the stage suddenly puked up a mouthful of blood. And Yan Ming himself had fallen to the ground without any consciousness. A mere shout had caused everybody to puke blood. What bull! I do not believe it. I do not blame you. Even I had a hard time believing my eyes at the time. Such conversations were going on throughout the sect, and even Elder Sun, who had stopped the fight, could not help but recall the frightening pressure that suddenly enveloped the place. What happened between the two of you during the fight? Tell me everything. Elder Sun glared at Yan Ming, who he had taken in for questioning. I don't know, Yan Ming said with a huge headache. All I can remember is stabbing that Su Yang in the chest before a sudden wave of killing intent overwhelmed me. Before stabbing him, it was like fighting an idiot who didn't even know how to swing a sword properly. After that, however, Yan Ming shivered when he recalled the expression on Su Yang's face after stabbing him. It was almost as if I was looking at another person after he received my sword. Elder Sun pondered the words Yan Ming spoke. The killing intent I felt coming from that boy was not something that could be created after getting stabbed once, but something that can only be created with many near-death experiences and after killing many people. Who is that Su Yang really? And how come I have never heard of him until today? Elder Sun looked at Yan Ming and said, "You can leave now. Do not let me catch you on the stage without permission again." This disciple would not dare. After Yan Ming left the scene, Elder Sun began looking up information of Su Yang, but after just a few minutes of research, he was dumbstruck by the information he has received. From what he had gathered, Su Yang has been in this sect for nearly an entire year. Yet there has been no progression with his cultivation since he joined because he was unsuccessful in finding a partner. Elder Sun couldn't believe how such a handsome man such as Su Yang would be unable to find a partner, so he dug a little bit deeper. What he found shocked him numb, to the point where he didn't know what to feel. Mental issues? Don't know how to use his thing down there properly? No talent? Are you sure about this? Elder Sun asked the person who was providing him the information, who happened to be another sect elder. You may not know about him since you rarely pay attention to the outer court, but almost everybody within the outer court knows Su Yang and his condition. The only reason he is still able to stay in this sect as a disciple is because the patriarch believes that he could still be of some use for the sect with his handsome face. If he at least had a straight mind, then he would still have a chance in this world. Elder Sun sighed at the elder's words. Indeed, it was true that Su Yang had an incredibly handsome face even with the sect's high standards, but with the way he is, what waste of a handsome face. However, Elder Sun suddenly narrowed his eyes. He looked nothing like what you just told me when I saw him today. I don't know what else to tell you, Elder Sun. That's all we know about him. The elder shrugged. I understand. Thank you for the information, Elder Mu. Right. How's your granddaughter holding up within the sect? Does she have a partner yet? Elder Mu suddenly brought up his granddaughter who had recently joined the sect. When Elder Mu mentioned his granddaughter, the seriousness on Elder Sun disappeared, and he laughed. That girl is very picky. It'll be a long while before she finds somebody. Then, how about letting her meet my grandson, Mugong, one of these days? Elder Son's lips twitched at Elder Mu's suggestion, but he kept his smile and said casually, one of these days. When he finally decided to leave his room, Su Yang was greeted by Tang Hu and another figure, a beautiful young lady. She was Meng Jia, Tang Hu's partner. How's your injury? Tang Hu asked him after noticing him. Just a bug bite. Bug bite, huh? Tang Hu chuckled. Being roommates for nearly a year, he was able to feel that there was something different about the current Su Yang. The most obvious part was that he no longer has that idiotic expression on his face and now looked more normal. Where are you going now? Just a stroll around the place, said Su Yang, who was already at the door, ready to leave. But your injury? Like I said, just a bug bite. After Su Yang left the place, Meng Jia said, he looks different today. You think so too? How so? He's more handsome, eh? Her words dumbfounded him. Meng Jia smiled at his expression and said, don't worry. No matter how handsome he gets, you will be my only partner. That's not it, Tang Hu said with a blush. All right, let's go cultivate. Meng Jia suddenly pulled Tang Hu to his room, where they would soon embrace each other with bare skin. Chapter 4. Within the Profound Blossom sect exists one building that has everything from valuable resources to expensive treasures, medicines, spirit stones, weapons, all that could be obtained at the White Pearl Treasury as long as one has enough premium points. Premium points are a kind of currency that only has value within the Profound Blossom sect. With premium points, one can exchange it for anything within the White Pearl Treasury. Premium points can be obtained through the sect by doing meritorious deeds for the sect, or by doing missions. They can also be traded with others like a real currency. How much premium points for this pure yang flower? Su Yang asked the elder behind the desk. He had decided to come to the White Pearl Treasury after realizing that he is currently too weak. But without a partner to cultivate with, the only way he'd be able to cultivate would be with resources obtained from the sect. And what better way to get resources than from the White Pearl Treasury, where all types of valuable resources could be found and purchased? Pure yang flower. Why does an outer court disciple like yourself want with such a valuable medicine? The old man looked at him with an intrigued expression. 10,000 premium points. 10,000? Su Yang lifted his eyebrows with surprise. The most premium points someone can obtain in a mission should be 100, and those are the highest difficulties. Yet you want 10,000 premium points for a mere pure yang flower. This is robbery in plain daylight. In his eyes, the pure yang flower is only a low-quality medicine used by mortals, yet they treat it as though it is some sort of godly medicine. The patriarch himself priced it. If you have any complaints, then you can go to him. Otherwise, the price is final. Su Yang glanced at the jade slip in his grasp and sighed. 34 premium points after spending 1 year in this place. He looked around, and many beauties came into his view. I could just get a partner. But no matter how I look at it, they are all just brats that are still wet behind their ears. While Su Yang is currently inside the body of a 16-year-old young man, his mental age is anything but young. He just couldn't get himself to stick his rod into kids that are not even half his actual age. And while one's age does not matter when it comes to cultivators that can live thousands of years and remain looking young, it just didn't feel right to Su Yang. So, do you want it or not? The elder behind the desk said in an impatient tone, despite already knowing the answer. He could guess that Su Yang did not have enough premium points just by his status as a mere outer court disciple. Forget about an outer court disciple such as him. Even an inner court disciple would have a hard time obtaining 10,000 premium points. I want it. Su Yang's answer dumbfounded the elder. But not right now. In 10 days. I will return with enough premium points to exchange for it. How will you manage that? The elder asked with his eyes wide open. Su Yang only smiled at the elder's question and walked away without answering, which caused a few veins to appear on the elder's forehead. After leaving the White Pearl Treasury, Su Yang went to find a large piece of cloth and something to write on it. After that, he went to the training center, where it is populated with disciples all day and night, before standing there in the open with the piece of cloth. With a sign, spread for the whole world to see. Heavenly massage. Experience what it feels like to be in heaven. First 3 customers free of charge. Heavenly massage? Isn't that Su Yang? What foolishness is he up to today? Experience heaven? Ha ha ha, he just wants to touch girls. Damn, this bastard is getting really desperate. The disciples there laughed without reserve. Su Yang stood there silently with a calm expression on his face as the place filled with laughter. This reminds me of my younger days. He reminisced the past when he used to stand in the streets all day and night with the exact same sign. After standing there for many hours straight without anybody approaching him, some disciples finally decided to speak with him for fun. Hey, Su Yang, what in the devil's name are you doing right now? We all know you just want to feel up some girls since you cannot find a partner. To think you'd come up with such a wicked plan, how shameless. However, despite the disciples disdaining, Su Yang continued to stand there with his eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Hey, listen when I am talking to you, you shameless bastard. Just as the disciple raised his fist, Su Yang opened his eyes, and within his gaze flashed a dangerous light. Stand aside, brat. I have a customer, Su Yang said, dumbfounding the disciples. When the disciples turned around, a beautiful young lady stood there with her arms crossed, her gaze seemingly filled with suspicion. What kind of massage? She asked in an aggressive tone. The kind that will make your back pain disappear. Su Yang's unexpected words caused the young lady to widen her eyes. How did you know that I have back pain? Su Yang did not reply to her and only looked at his sign and smiled. Chapter 5. Are you saying that you can heal my back pain with this massage of yours? Su Yang calmly nodded at her question. Don't listen to him. He is only trying to take advantage of you. Yeah. Who knows what he'll do to you once to follow him? Do you have any idea who he is? The young lady looked at the group of disciples and frowned. And who are you? We are. Before the disciples can even introduce themselves, Su Yang spoke. I can heal you, but only if you follow my conditions. Conditions? Are you in the position to ask for conditions? I know that you have been standing here for many hours without a single customer. If I leave now, then who knows when your next customer may come, if it ever happens. After a moment of silence, Su Yang nodded and said calmly, Then, for having enough courage to stand before me, I shall part you with a gift. Your back pain. Don't underestimate it and go find a doctor to treat it quickly before you turn into a cripple. A cripple? Well, what do you mean by that? The young lady began panicking after hearing his words, but that was not what Su Yang had intended. If you think that your back pain was caused by bad positioning during your cultivation, then you can't be more wrong. Then what was the cause? The young lady began sweating profusely after Su Yang became silent for more than a few seconds. I will do it. I will accept your conditions. The young lady gave up after a few more seconds of silence. Su Yang nodded and said, Condition 1. The session will only last for 10 minutes, no more, no less. Condition 2. You must share your experience after the massage with 10 people. Condition 3. You're only allowed to come back 1 month after your last massage session. If you refuse to any of these conditions, then you may turn around and walk away. If you fail to fulfill the second and third condition after the massage, then you can forget about coming back ever again. That's it. The young lady thought Su Yang had something far more serious in mind, but such easy conditions, who wouldn't accept? 1 month? It'd be a miracle if you have another customer after her today. The disciples laughed. Do you accept? I accept. Good. Then follow me. Su Yang rolled up his sign and carried it on his back as he began leading the young lady back to his living quarters. She's really going to follow him. Should we stop her? Let her be. She can only blame herself later for trusting someone like Su Yang. The disciples watched as Su Yang and the young girl disappear into the distance. None of the dozens of people there tried to stop her because they are all intrigued in what will happen when she returns. This is your living quarters? Are we doing it here? Then would you rather do it outside? Su Yang asked her with a slight smile. The young lady looked around with her imaginations running wild, causing her to blush. Su Yang didn't wait for her to answer and walked into the house. Wait up! After entering the dead silent house, Su Yang went straight into his room, and the young lady followed with caution. I swear to the heavens that if you do anything funny to me, you will pay for it with your life. You are too young to be my taste, little girl. Little girl. You look just about as old as me. Su Yang shrugged at her reply. Lay down on the bed with your back facing the ceiling. The young lady stood there silently, her gaze staring at him with intensity. You can keep your clothes on. After hearing his words, the young lady sighed in relief and laid herself on the bed. Su Yang cracked his knuckles and stretched around for a few moments before he said, Your 10 minutes begins now. Try not to lose consciousness. What do you mean by, oh? The young lady suddenly let out an unexpected moan of pleasure that caused Su Yang's ears to tingle with delight. Wah! What did you just do? Stop wiggling around like a worm. You're making this more difficult for me. The sense of pleasure on her back overwhelmed the young lady's sense of hearing, making her feel as though she was in another world, in heaven. She couldn't understand what she was feeling, but it was not a sense of feeling that could be made with the hands of a human, almost as though she was feeling the hands of a god. Time passed by quickly, but within the young lady's world, it felt almost like an eternity. And suddenly, the sense of pleasure ended. It was too sudden, almost feeling like it was the end of the world. Why did you stop? The young lady turned to look at Su Yang, and on her red face was a sensual expression, one that begged for more. Your 10 minutes is over, Su Yang said in a calm tone. But the pain in your back should have subdued by now, but reduce the time you spend to cultivating by half for the next month for it to be permanent. Please, 10. No. Just 5 more minutes. I will pay you any amount. The young lady pleaded Su Yang to extend the service, but Su Yang only shook his head. I cannot accept anything from you as I have already stated that my first 3 customers will be free of charge. You can come back next month, after you spread your experience here to 10 people. The young lady bit her lips in frustration, reluctantly nodding a few seconds later. I look forward to your next visit, Zhou Zuan. The young lady said, My name is Zhou Zuan. I am called Su Yang. He smiled at her as he watched her exit the front door, her legs looking unstable as she walked, like a drunk walking home after spending a whole night drinking.